Our story and our mission is drowning prevention. Dana, would you share your story with us?
Sure. Well, my name is Dana Gage, and I know some of you. When you lose a child to drowning, your community gets very small, and at the same time, way too large. So it's a pleasure to tell my story in the sense that I have the opportunity to. So my husband and I have 2 boys. One lives on earth and one lives in heaven. And when Connor was 15 years old, August 31st, 2012, it was the first day of Labor Day weekend. And he was invited to a birthday party at the lake. And we were lake people. Connor grew up on the lake. We had a lake house. He was very comfortable with open water. But one thing we didn't normally do was let any of our children go to the lake with another family. But this family we knew well. We thought, it'll be okay. It's 4-day weekend. He's so jazzed. He wants to go. It's a birthday party with 4 of his friends and a host family. So we said, okay. So about 5:30, my oldest son gives Connor a ride to the pickup point, and as he leaves the driveway, he blows me his kiss, and I catch it, because that was our thing. And that's the last time I saw Connor alive. And they arrived at the lake house rather late in the day, but you get 5 teenagers around a lake, and they want to go in. They want to swim. And so they asked for permission, and they got permission to swim. And at about 8:15 p.m. that night, they were playing a game, and they were jumping off the top of the boat dock, and this was a rented lake house. So Connor was familiar with open water, but he wasn't familiar with this particular dock. He had literally done thousands of jumps from our boat dock, but never from this one. And he jumped from the top of the boat dock, and he landed badly. And at first, his friends thought he was joking around when he did not resurface. But they quickly figured out that something was wrong. And a search ensued, but no one could see him and no one could reach him. And Connor had to be pulled from the lake 40 minutes later, and he could not be resuscitated. And an hour later, an hour after he had gone in the water, we got a phone call from one of his friends, actually, ironically, not a friend who was actually at the lake, but someone who had heard about it. And they said, we hear that something happened to Connor. And the words lake water and something happened to Connor immediately put me to my knees, and I knew something was terribly wrong. And we drove like mad from Fort Worth to Mineral Wells, and we learned Connor was gone. And that's the day that our happy family of 4 went to a very broken family of 3. So that's our story. About Connor.
Thank you.
You want me?
Sure, Jane and Mike.
So, I'm Jane, my husband Mike. We, at the time, our son Jalen, we lost. At the time had 3 kids. We now have 5, including Jalen. September 21st, 2013, 4 days before Jalen was going to turn 2, we were having a birthday party for him at my sister's house. The kids had swam all day. Jalen was our little boy that was so full of life. He just loved life, loved everything, and he loved to swim. We always kept the puddle jumpers on him. and just let him go. He was great in the water, but he hadn't had the swimming training. So we swam all afternoon. We just finished up and we're having dinner, and we're finishing dinner. And he was sitting on my husband's lap. I was inside eating dinner with my sister. My husband and my brother-in-law were outside, and Jalen was on my husband's lap. And Jalen's big brother walked by, and Jalen got off my husband's lap to follow his brother to the garage where the pool was right here. Well, somehow Jalen didn't follow his big brother. And about a minute later, I looked up and walked outside and said, because I had known that Jalen was on Mike's lap, and I said, "Where's Jalen?" And Mike saw he went with Ian to the garage. And I started looking in the water, of course, and we were running to the garage, and then my nephew, who was 5 feet away from the hot tub, goes, "He's in here." And my husband and brother-in-law ran to the pool, pulled him out, the hot tub, performed CPR immediately. He couldn't have been in the water more than, 30 seconds, a minute. It was so fast. Trying to call 911 in that moment, it's just like pure chaos. We got a hold of 911. They got him breathing. My husband and brother-in-law got him breathing. The medics, he was crying. The medics got there, said, he's gonna be okay, he's crying. Life flighted him here to Cook's Children's. And I guess on the way here, something went wrong, and we arrived at Cook's, and we lost him. And a birthday party we were celebrating, about to cut the birthday cake, and never got cut that night. And our lives changed forever. So that's our story, and it happens quickly. Life changes in seconds. And it's been hard. We miss him every day. Every day he's thought about and talked about in our home. So.
Aaron, you're up.
It's kind of the first time I've talked about this, so forgive me if it takes a minute.
So what were you doing that day?
I was being a dad. It was my weekend with my kids. They'd been begging me all weekend to go swimming. They wanted to go to the lake. We always went to the lake. They pretty much were raised around the lake out there at PK. And I was with my good buddy, and I thought I had all the bases covered, and we were just going to go for a little bit. I didn't even have that much longer before I had to take them to meet their mother. So we were only going to get their feet wet, let them make a sandcastle or two, and then call it a day. And there had been a drought, so the lake was a lot different that day, and I could tell as soon as we got in the water, it didn't feel right.
When you say it didn't feel right, what do you mean by that?
Usually you could walk into Sandy Beach about 20 feet and it not come up to your chest. That year, I walked in about 5 feet and it was already up to my shoulders. And I'd been out that lake, like I said, since I was even 3 years old, so I know it well. And it just wasn't right. So I told my friend, I said, So Justin, let's put them on the shore. I don't feel safe with them out here. I'd rather them be on the shore. And he had my daughter, and we were each holding one of my kids. So we took Dixie and Wyatt to the shore, and I looked at them both sternly, and I told them to stay here and build a sandcastle for Daddy. And when we turned around to go back to the water, I didn't know he was following me back out to the water. When my Dixie saw him following me and cried, "Daddy." What? Wyatt's drowning, so I turned back around. It was, I don't know. It was like 2 or 3 minutes or something. I put him there and I walked and turned around. He's not there, so I started diving in the water, and we started looking, and I dove into it. And so I was exhausted, and other people were diving, looking. It took rescue divers to come, and they found him. And when they brought his body up to the surface, I knew he was gone. I knew he was gone. So
How old was Wyatt?
he was 3 years old, and that was 5 years ago. It was July 4th weekend. There were other families out there, and for however long that took, time just stood still.
Mike, how do you cope with the loss of your son?
You have these moments where you like, wow, you let your son down. I've even seen myself get mad at him and myself at me not making sure that he was walking the way that direction of his brother. And I've always taught him, I'm pretty strict dad. Whatever I say, you go with that. You don't do anything else, and you follow my rules. So I get mad at him for not following my rules, but then I look at it like, he's only 2. He was just turning 2. So it's pretty, though I tell him, what to do and how to do it, it always falls back on me. I should have done this or done that. We make those mistakes by taking our eyes off of them at those critical times. And that was one of those critical times for us. So it basically haunts you every day. It does me. There's not a day I wake up and don't think about my son. Or don't think about, what could have been. I just wish I'd done some things differently that day. Because I can hear him in my head saying, "Dad, where were you? Why weren't you there?" He relied on me so much. And I know he did.
It's funny because we weren't distracted. There were our kids there, so our 3, and then my sister has 3 kids. you know, and so it was really actually a really low-key night. And so really it wasn't a chaotic scene. It was very peaceful. It was a beautiful, I mean, it was September, just, you know, the weather was perfect, and we were in the kitchen cleaning up, getting ready to do birthday cake. And so no, it was very calm. There wasn't a lot going on. And that's why it was so baffling to us how quickly it happened, because I'm very aware of my children and what they're doing. And like I said, I saw him on my husband's lap, and it was literally a minute later, I noticed he wasn't, and immediately I said, okay, where's Jalen? Because I've always been, the water, we've loved to swim. Swimming's been a huge thing for our family. I love being outside. The summer's my favorite time of year. But water's always made me uneasy with little kids because I know how curious they are. So anytime we're around water, I'm very like on edge. And so the second I saw that he wasn't with my husband, I got up and said, where's Jalen? You know, and it, I mean, and the crazy thing is that my nephew was about 5 feet from the hot tub where Jalen happened to get in. No one saw him. So it's just like it happens so fast. And he was 5 feet from him and didn't hear a thing. You know, and the thing is that Jalen had been in that hot tub hundreds of times. And I think that's the thing. He was comfortable with the floaties on. He didn't realize he didn't have them on, and he thought he could just get in and be okay. And even though he knew that hot tub, he knew how to get up on the seat where he could have gotten up. I think he jumped in and got disoriented. But it's silent. It's not like the movies say. It's not the flapping and the screaming and the help me. I mean, my nephew was 5 feet from him. And so, I mean, it can happen in the most calm, not chaotic setting too. So, yeah.
And just the thought of it, like it's inconceivable.
It is.
Like you said, there's no way he got in that water. It's just inconceivable that would even be
Well,
a possibility.
it doesn't happen to us, right?
Mhm. Right.
You hear the story, and that's the thing. You hear the story, but you never think you're going to be the story. You know, and even when he fell in, and there was no thought in my mind that I was going to get to, I thought he'd be in the hospital for a couple days and we'd be coming home. Yeah. You know, there was no thought in my mind that I was going to lose him.
That's when we got to the hospital, we did not know if Connor was dead or alive. But to be honest, dead never entered the picture. And finally, my husband just asked like this one question. And I will never forget that one question, because it was the most, he might as well have been speaking a foreign language. Mm-hmm. I was like, he said, did he make it? And I was like, did he make it? Yeah. I was like, what do you mean, honey, why are you even asking, did he make it? It's not, did he make it? It's how bad is it? Yeah. And the guy just looked at him with a one-word response, and it was like, no. Yeah. And it was, everything went black. Yeah. So it's an odd, I think, for me, and then at 3 a.m, it suddenly dawns on me, he can't be dead. He has a life jacket on. I literally, in my head, am thinking, he's not dead. Yeah. He's got a life jacket on. And I told my husband, Brett, I said, wait, he's got a life jacket. And he said, what? He was just like, honey, he didn't have a life jacket on. And that's when it all just came into full focus. And my screw up, I was such an idiot, Our rule at our lake house, and just to be clear, it's not about blame, it's about awareness, because I now am painfully aware that, the lake, there's a misnomer with lakes, particularly with teens. There's an assumption that if you know how to swim, you're good. But our rule at our lake house was toe in, vest on. We didn't, especially with teenagers. And I just never thought to ask. It never occurred to me, like, you're going to have life jackets on the boys, right? Because it just was so normal for us. was, and like I said, it was the first time we had let Connor go to the lake with anybody else, ever. First time. And when Brett said he didn't have a life jacket on, I was like, but wait, that's against the rules. You know? But then I realized those were our rules, and our rules weren't everybody's rules. And then I learned it's pretty much that way. I mean, the chances of drowning triple at age 15 in open water. And it's the teenagers and the young adult men, frankly, that are at the greatest risk. But there's a huge problem. People would say, what happened? Because they needed a formula. They needed a reason.
Yeah.
Like, well, what happened? You know, like, you couldn't just jump in the water and die. That was inconceivable. You know, it's like, that can't just happen. That's precisely what happened. It's one bad fall, one bad jump, one bad gulp,
Yep.
and it's over.
It's 1 second.
And there is no second chances with lake water. You know, lake water is murky, especially in Texas. You can't see your fingers 3 inches under the surface.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, I think Mike actually said it right, because you probably, Aaron, you said to your son Wyatt, "You stay here. You guys stay here." You know, and your hope is that you've taught your children to
To trust me.
to trust you and follow your direction. You know.
I just didn't know he was trusting me too much, so, you know, he's trusting Daddy to pull him up out of the water before it was too late. You know, he just, and that's what sticks with me after all this is it was 2 weeks after the funeral, and everyone's grieving and everyone's hurting, and I'm not right, but it was my kid weekend again, so I get Dixie and I'm looking in the back seat and little man's seat's empty, and so I immediately started having a bad day, and then I get home and I'm still having a bad day, so Dixie comes up to me and she grabs my face and says, "It's okay, Daddy, we all miss him." I said, "I know, baby girl, but I just wish I could have saved him." She said, "Well, Daddy, he could have grabbed his hand." And that's when I knew that she actually saw him. So, you know, he was reaching for me, and as a father, that, you know, it just hurt that much more. Because that means he was probably inches away, and I still can.
I think it haunts all of us. You know, Connor was 15, but he's my baby boy.
Yeah.
And you know, my prayer has always been that he just got knocked out or something when he hit the water. I don't think that's what happened.
Yeah.
But I think that's what haunts all of us.
Yeah, I think
It's just the thought of them wanting, needing rescue. And that's our job. And we let them down.
Yeah.
We let our babies down.
There's a lot of I actually hadn't had a bad day in a while. What was about a week ago? Mm-hmm. Couldn't go to bed all night because for the first year, night was really hard for me. If I closed my eyes, all that would happen was go back to that night. The first year, and then it slowly got better, you know. But it'd been a few months, and about a week ago, I couldn't go to sleep, and I went to that night. When I can't sleep, I go to that night. And there's so much, like, I failed him. As a mother, I failed him because I'm supposed to protect him. And I think that's what's so hard now is the guilt of we are the parents. They don't know better. We're supposed to protect our babies, and I could not protect him that night. And I failed him. And I mean, I know I did my best as a mother.
And I think people want to say, no, you know, it can happen to anybody. But the truth is, it happened to us.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, why we're here.
Yeah.
because we know what it feels like to be in a prison cell that we cannot escape.
Yeah.
It's no fun, and we don't want anybody else to be in their own prison cell. And the truth is, we did fail them,
Yeah.
and we didn't mean for it to happen,
No.
but it happened, and, I'm sure all of us here, we make decisions to focus on living because we know that's what our children would want us to do. We make a choice, not because we feel like it, but because that's how we can honor them the best.
Yeah.
And but it's truthfully when people say, "How are you?" It's do you want the real answer or do you want me to fake it?
Yeah.
And usually it's a fake it answer because I think if we all behaved the way we felt, we'd all be rocking in the fetal position in a corner somewhere. Because it is absolutely, a friend of mine described it to me this way. She said, you've got what's happening in this environment. We're all sitting here, we're speaking with one another, I'm looking at you, we're conversing, we're talking, we're in the moment. But then you always have your child right here.
This doesn't just happen to parents that aren't watching, parents that aren't present and available, right? I mean, and I think that's something that we need to kind of dispel the myth, if you will, are those parents that don't care about their kids, right? Those are the deadbeat parents that they're not there. They just let their kids run wild,
No, drowning doesn't discriminate. It happens to all races, all ages, all bodies of water, all ways.
All walks of life.
All walks of life, all socioeconomic levels. It's not partisan. It happens to Republicans and it happens to Democrats. There's no good way and there's no good age, but there are lots of ways to die in water, which is evidenced around our table. I mean, we have kids different ages and different bodies of water.
Yeah, and Aaron, your first comment was, I was being a dad. Right?
Yeah, that's what it was. It was my dad. It was my kid weekend, so I was just trying to be the best dad I could be before I took him back to his mother. But sadly, me and his mother had to reunite at a gurney table. The helplessness was from the first minute. From the first minute that I lost him, and when the rescue divers finally showed up, I had a sense of hope. I guess I was like, they're gonna find him. They'll find him. And he's just. I was thinking then he maybe he ran up to where the playground was and he was up there playing. Yeah. And so I had hope all of a sudden, and then somebody yelled, they found him, and so I immediately turned that way, and I saw a group of the divers were coming to the shore, and I could just tell I could tell they had my boy. And so when he finally came up to the surface, I yelled, no. Because that wasn't supposed to be him, and that wasn't supposed to be me. And I guess I kind of yelled it a little loud, and it drew a lot of their attention. And then all I could think of is I just want to hold him and kiss him and tell him I'm sorry. So they pinned me on the beach because they had to get him to the ambulance. They don't have time for me. And somebody was telling me in my ear the whole time, just stay strong. And I don't know who he was, but he was one of them. And he was just saying, stay strong, stay strong. And the helplessness was rampant. All I could think was that this can't be me. This can't be what's happening. When I was just trying my hardest to show my love and to be as good of a dad as I could with what short amount of time I get when it's my weekend. So.
Well, I remember when we finally got to say Jalen, and I leaned over to him and I'm like, wake up.
Yeah.
Wake up. You know, this isn't real. Wake up, don't leave me. I kept telling him, don't leave me. And I think it took months. I think sometimes still, I don't believe that it happened.
No.
You know, I know I have this son, Jalen. I know, but that didn't happen. It didn't happen. You know, that'll probably be something that we deal with the rest of our lives. You know, the denial, but we know it happened in a sense. I don't know. Somebody
said that they went black when it happened. Not one of you guys said it, and I know during that time when we actually got to hold him for the last time, it was like it was black.
Yeah.
For me. It was like, oh man, you must be out of your mind.
Yeah. It was like an out of
Can't be
body.
real.
It's like an
no way it could be real.
out of body experience
Yes.
where this wasn't happening to us, but it was.
It was just that bad. I just couldn't imagine that happening to my son.
Yeah.
And at that point, I just couldn't take it anymore. I had to walk out. I had to get out of there.
Oldest son, who's a junior in high school, who just lost his best friend and his brother. It's chaos. And the whole ER is full of screaming, wailing kids. All of his friends were out there, and it's just insane. And the sweet friends that are with Connor, you know, I immediately went to them and said, this is not your fault. This is not your fault, because I knew. And when I walked out of talking with those boys, I looked outside, and my 16-year-old son, who's 18 months old, 18 months older than Connor, was laying out on the front of the sidewalk, literally just like face down on the sidewalk in front of the hospital. I've never told anybody that.
Well, I think that's the thing about this too. It doesn't only affect the parents. My son, who's just turned 15, I only learned a year ago, 4 years later, that he had been holding in it for 4 years, that it was his fault. That he should have known that Jalen was following him. And he held that in for 4 years. You know, he's a really quiet, you know, just does what he's told kid. You know, and I didn't know he was holding that in. And then my daughter, they were the best of buddies. And she still, I think yesterday or a couple days ago, she looked at his picture, she said, I miss him so much, Mom. So it's not just the parents that are affected, it's everyone around that knew them. You know, my sister's family, that we were at her house, deeply affected. You know, her son who found him, he has struggled. They have guilt because they've lived in that house 3 months. And you know what she said when she bought that house? Because their last house had a gate around their pool. Her kids were older, they didn't need a gate. When she was buying the house, she said, Jane, my only thing is that we don't have a gate around the pool. And I said, Becky, it's okay. We watch our kids. I'm not worried about it. We know, we'll watch the kids, you know. So we were aware of the situation, you know, but so it's not only affects the parents, it affects everyone that loved that child.
How has this affected Dixie?
Oh man, so shit. My Dixie used to be pretty lively. She used to be pretty. She wasn't timid about much. Since the incident, yeah, she's a completely different Dixie Mae now. She's of course it took a long while to get her even comfortable around water, and that was almost therapy in itself for me and her, because I didn't want to be around water either for a while. I don't know about for y'all, but for me, it was just I thought, you know, I did it. I tried to do everything right, and then it was just an oversight. That oversight of not having the jacket on that one time, and that one time was in the cards to not be in my favor that day. So
It just take one time, one time for him to, think outside the box for himself.
I think that's a hard thing just having an older child who drowns. You know, a lot of people would ask me, what did he do, or was he being reckless, or
Yeah.
he was just being Connor.
A teenage
He
boy.
wasn't a crazy, out of control kid. In fact, he was quite measured and sensible. But he's 15 years old.
Like you were talking about Dixie. We have a 2-year-old that's almost exactly to the T, like Jalen. And we worry so much about him, in a sense that we have him in swimming lessons right now, 2 times a week. But we still won't let him. I mean, he goes in nowhere without us like that, around water or anything like that anymore. I mean, ever. But he's just like Jalen. He's exactly like, probably a little worse.
Well, and now our 1-year-old, maybe even.
Yeah.
So water gives me anxiety. I've always loved the pool, and we really decided after Jalen that we weren't going to let that ruin our children's childhood
Right.
and stop the water activities and stuff. But I get really anxiety around pools, and like anytime anyone invites us for a barbecue that has a pool, I'm kind of like, yeah, I don't know that I want to go, because the stress it's too much for me. I just, and it took me about a year to want to take my kids to the water again, to the pool, and even then I don't think we don't nearly go as much as we used to.
Yeah.
I think we're all so different in how we handle it. I mean, everybody grieves so differently, but it's 6 years for me, and I still can't handle water.
Yeah, that's a
And
reminder.
it's a sad thing for my oldest, for Riley. He said to me, he's like, I really miss the lake. I mean, some of our best days as a family were at the lake. And we were in Chicago, and he actually gave me some comfort. We were walking pretty close to Lake Michigan, and I made a comment or something like, God, this is so much water, And he goes, Mom, Connor loved the water.
Yeah.
He's like, it didn't work out like any of us ever thought it would, but he loved the water.
Yeah.
And in a way, that gave me some comfort.
And Jalen loved the water too. Jalen loved it.
I just didn't want to punish my other kids about
it-
the water because of my shortfalls. My shortfalls. I don't want them to feel that there's a situation with the water that Daddy don't want us to be a part of.
I think that's smart.
I don't think that. I think we, at this point, we put them in the life jacket. We show them the right way to swim. Teach them how to swim. We do what we have to do. If we have to sit there in the pool with them while they're in the pool, hey, that's what we have to do. Anything to make them safe. But right now, I mean, and if I'm not going, I don't want my kids going.
Yeah, and I won't go if he doesn't go with me.
Because they're so young. But once they get older, I think I would have to, hopefully I'll train, give that training to them enough to where they can now say, okay, I know I need to wear my life jacket. I know I need to, these are the things I need to do in order to be safe. That's it.
I think too, no matter how much we educate our kids and try to protect them, things happen. I mean, you did everything right with Connor, and he, like you said, bad fall, one bad gulp, and
I did one thing really wrong. I didn't make sure that life jackets would be used at this party.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, it's like when we know better, we do better. It's too late. I mean, it's too late for me to do better. He's gone, and there are no more kids. But we can do better, I guess, by letting other people know our story.
Definitely.
And you know, you guys have littles, and I think that that's a blessing, because in so many ways you can take what you've learned
Yeah.
and not repeat your mistakes, and share it with other people so they don't make the mistakes that we made. But it was just, you know, I always say Connor's cause of death on his death certificate was drowning, but the true cause of Connor's death was ignorance. It was my ignorance for not making sure he was protected, and it was the host family's ignorance for not protecting him. And you know, that's what we got to try to fix, because I know we can't wrap them in bubble wrap, but you know, we wouldn't get it. We wouldn't get in a car. Might try it. We might, you know, you wouldn't get in a car without a seatbelt. There was a time when you did every single time you got in a car. So we just have to flip some thinking, and it's going to take a long time, but we're going to stay at it.
It's gonna have to take unfortunately happening to more and more families because you just I don't think I realized how common it was until I was in the club myself. You know, and now I hear the stories all too often, you know, and it's just.
Yeah, it's the #1 cause of accidental death in children ages 1 to 4 in the United States. It's a big problem. It's a huge.
It's second for
huge problem.
kids 14 and under, and it's 5th overall, and
Well,
it's so quiet.
And I think they glorify in the movies that it's loud and it's splashing and it's, you know, help, and it's nothing like that.
No,
silent.
We didn't hear.
It
There was not a splash.
so
There wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, it was a very peaceful night. It is glorified as loud, and that you'll know what's happening.
Thank you for being with us today. I hate the reason that you're here, but I am so thankful to have you. And I'm thankful for all the families that will get to hear this and be reminded or be educated for the first time. So thank you very much. I think it's safe to say if all of our kids at that day, that terrible day, had their life jackets on, none of this would have happened. We have to have our life jackets on. And just a reminder to everyone to lifeguard your child.